Would you leave it all behind to set your sights on new horizons?
跟其他人不一样的生活的方法。
將冇可能變成有可能嘅地方。
Could you journey afar to embrace your field of dreams?
江門創業嘅呢3年半嘅時間
I've been in Shanghai for 18 years.
Hear it firsthand from those who took that leap in footprints.
You can succeed anywhere if you're good enough.
堅持自己嘅初心，堅持自己嘅夢想嘅時候，終有一日你係會贏。
Where everyday people beat the odds and leave their mark. Footprints.
我到北京是2008年就10月份，其实就是奥运会。
37-year-old Chung Wai-Kit is a Beijing-based producer of documentary films. Born and raised in Hong Kong, Chung traces his family background to a city about 3,000 kilometers northeast of there.
我还是想要有机会再深入挖掘一下沈阳这个地方。
I wanted to explore what Shenyang can offer me in terms of making a documentary about it. This city is very special for me. I'm thinking about what I can express through my videos. It will be very special and meaningful for me to depict the city, which is home to my ancestral roots.
Besides Hong Kong and Beijing, Chung has lived and studied for a while in Taipei. He likes to see the outside world and intends to record the lives of ordinary people with his cameras. He says the Chinese mainland offers more opportunities than Hong Kong or Taiwan for young people who want to set out in life by themselves.
如果有一些朋友可能他心还是比较像我一样是有点蠢蠢欲动的那种心愿。
If you're restless like me and want to make something of yourself in a place far away from your home, I really encourage you to come to the mainland to try. You don't have to travel as far as I did. You can look in southern China, which is closer to Hong Kong. But the point is that you should take the first step to come out and try.
But what was the first step Chung himself took? In August 2008, the 29th Summer Olympic Games was held in Beijing. The spectacular event, widely watched around the globe, has made the city a dream place for many young people setting out in life. 2 months later, 25-year-old Chung Wai-Kit, who was working for a Taipei-based company, joined the tide.
然后毕业之后，遇到了我第一任老板。
After I graduated from university, I met my first boss. He wanted to open a subsidiary of his music production company. I worked as a video photographer at the company. He asked me whether I'd like to go to Beijing. In fact, I was already thinking about coming to this city. So I followed my boss and came to Beijing. He also kindly allowed me to stay for 3 months before I made my final decision on whether or not to stay here permanently.
Chung graduated from the Taipei-based Shiqing University in 2006. The young man had lived and studied in Taipei for 6 years before he decided to leave it for Beijing to see more of the world. When he first arrived in Beijing, this megacity gave the young man a sense of strangeness.
很不一样的那种感觉，因为是很陌生的。你对比起香港也好，
It's so different from other cities that I had lived in before. It was very strange to me. Hong Kong and Taipei are much smaller than Beijing, which is a huge metropolis. At the beginning, I wasn't used to life in Beijing. I felt life here was a hassle, as the city was so big.
Even back in 2008, Beijing was at least dozens of times bigger than Hong Kong or Taipei in terms of land area. Its population, then amounting to about 18 million, was larger than Hong Kong and Taipei combined. When he got to the metropolis, Chung Wai-Kit worked hard for his employer while making efforts to fit in with life in the new city. Gradually, he began to like Beijing and decided to stay, even when the company he worked for refocused its business and moved its Beijing subsidiary back to Taipei.
因为一开始他说先来3个月试试，然后3个月过后又觉得可以可以继续待着。
My boss had initially asked me to stay in Beijing for 3 months before making a final decision. After 3 months working in the city, I felt I could stay here for longer. So I worked for the Beijing subsidiary of the company for 2 to 3 years. Then the company decided to reduce its operations in Beijing and asked me whether I'd like to go back to Taipei.
反而我那时候就特别不想走了。
But by then, I didn't want to go. I felt that I had become familiar with this city, and maybe I could make something of myself here. So I decided to stay. It meant that I had to leave the company and find a new job with a local employer.
Chung hadn't found a job when he quit the Taipei company, but the young man, then in his 20s, was confident of his ability and optimistic about his future. But it wasn't going to be easy.
就觉得啊，凭我自己的实力努力，还是能找到工作一定。
I thought I'd definitely find a new job, but in the end, I found it difficult to find a good one. You know, a good and suitable job doesn't just mean wages, but also whether you like it or not. I was rejected again and again for about a year. Life was hard for me in 2011 and 2012.
Hearing about Chang's bad situation in Beijing, his family back in Hong Kong persuaded him to try his luck in another city. But the young man didn't give up on Beijing. He kept going by taking various kinds of part-time jobs.
那个时候这2年有一点点相关的工作都去试一试，所以我做了好多事情。那2年
During the years when I had no permanent job, I tried many part-time jobs that I could do. So I did a lot of things during that period. For example, I worked as a freelance video photographer and editor for some projects. I also arranged events like musical festivals. I also worked part-time for some documentary production companies.
Chung remembers that he didn't like those jobs, though they helped him survive in Beijing. Luckily for him, the young job seeker got to know many friends through his various part-time jobs. Finally, in 2013, he got a permanent job with a startup media company. He worked as a producer, making documentaries about youth culture that were broadcast on internet video platforms. 3 years later, he joined a more established media company called Jiemian. So what is his life and work in this company like? Stay tuned to find out after a short break.
You've been listening to Footprints.
Since mid-2016, Chung has been in charge of a documentary project called Jianchang Video, featuring the lives of ordinary people. Chung explains why he and his team called the project Jianchang, which literally means depot of arrows.
不是说一个很完整的计划，然后就开始做。
Initially, we didn't have a comprehensive plan for our Jianchang project. We were perfecting our plan as we were getting down to work. It was at a pub along an alley in Beijing called Jianchang, where several other producers and I were discussing. So we called it Jianchang. You know, Jian, meaning arrow, gives people a sense of sharpness and impact. This kind of sharpness and impact were just what we wanted, as our project was to create documentaries about frontline societal changes and people's lives.
Chung says his team produces one documentary a week on average. Each film is usually 10 to 20 minutes long and released online. Over the past 4 years, his team has made 150 documentaries. One of their representative works is about a group of Japanese people living in the city of Nanjing in eastern China. Chang's documentary features the life of 2 Japanese persons who have settled down in Nanjing, a language teacher and a man working in the food industry, as well as 2 others who are living in the city to study for a short time. Chung says the theme of peace is what the documentary wants to convey to the audiences.
南京是曾经一个有昌巴的城市，也是因为
Nanjing is a city scarred by the invasion and massacre of the Japanese forces. Now a long time has passed since the catastrophe. In the context of world peace, the city has welcomed many foreign nationals, including Japanese. We thought the topic of Japanese in Nanjing would be a good one to arouse interest. Why do Japanese people come and stay in Nanjing? What's their life like? These questions are what our documentary Japanese in Nanjing tried to answer.
The title and topic, Japanese in Nanjing, promises to evoke strong, complex feelings among many Chinese audiences. Humiliation and sadness are often associated with that period of history. For some, hatred of the Japanese invaders still lingers more than 80 years after the Japanese forces committed atrocities in the then-occupied capital of China. Chang's documentary finds that the Japanese interviewees live an ordinary life in today's Nanjing and are welcomed by local people. Since 2016, Chung and his documentary team have been searching for such kind of thought-provoking topics and stories. Chung says many of their works focus on the lives of young people, including those from Hong Kong, just like himself. Over the years, the Hong Kong-born documentary producer has gained rich experience on the mainland through his work and traveling. As a result, he's developed a keen insight into the lives of residents living across this vast land.
以前比方在香港生活或者是在台北生活，其实
In the past, when I lived in Hong Kong and Taiwan, I felt that people from these two regions had similar backgrounds, although every individual is different. But after I came to the mainland, I realized it was much, much larger. People from the eastern, western, northern, or southern parts have great differences in their living environments, lifestyles, temperament, and in their ways of thinking. This kind of geocultural difference and vastness of the land have impressed me the most.
这个对我感觉是最大的。
Drawing inspiration from his own experience, Chung says the mainland, with its vast land and huge population, can offer young people more opportunities compared with Hong Kong.
对在内地生活来说，就会变成就是
He describes himself and his fellow Hong Kong friends living on the mainland as Beipiao, which literally means floating in Beijing. The term has become popular in recent years as millions of people have migrated from other parts of China to the capital city to seek a better life. It has been used by young people to describe their sometimes unsatisfactory life state, struggles and anxiety in a city far away from home. But for Chung, he has not felt the bitterness of being one of the Beipiao people.
其实对我来说还好，其实我可能个性上比较
Being a Beipiao is okay for me. I've liked traveling and living in different places since my childhood. So I don't think that living far from your home is a thing to cause sadness or feelings of rootlessness. I have no such feelings, but I know the life state of many of my fellow Beipiao people. I know their anxieties and struggles.
According to his own observation, Chung says there are far fewer Hong Kong people living in Beijing than cities in eastern and southern China, like Shanghai, Shenzhen, or Guangzhou. Taking himself as an example, Chung says many young Hong Kong people know little about the mainland before they come here.
As a matter of fact, Hong Kong people born in the 1980s and the 1990s generally are unfamiliar with the mainland, excluding Shenzhen, which is very close to Hong Kong. Far north or the west, those places are a very strange land for us.
Chung says Hong Kong people born in the 1980s and early 1990s have fewer opportunities to travel across the vast Chinese land compared with their mainland counterparts. During Chang's childhood and early teenage days, Hong Kong was still ruled by the British. The city's connection and communication with the mainland would only be enhanced and frequented after its return to the motherland in 1997. But Chung knows that the cultural links between Hong Kong and the mainland have been increasing since the 1980s, when the mainland entered a period of reform and opening up. Initially, the more developed Hong Kong and Taiwan held their advantages in pop culture. Cantonese music and films produced by the city's artists were popular among young people living on the mainland. Chung knows a reverse trend has been underway in recent years.
这几年来，我们包括看到内地的电影啊、音乐啊，就是还是比较多接触到。
I have seen that music and films from the mainland have been introduced to Hong Kong and Taiwan. In 2017, when I visited my relatives in Taiwan, I noticed that one child of my relatives sang Xiaoping Guo. I said, wow, you know, this song was then very popular on the mainland. So I found a deepening cultural exchange among the ordinary people of Hong Kong, Taiwan, and the mainland.
Xiaoping Guo literally means little apple. The song was created by a mainland music group called Chopsticks Brothers. It's well known for its simple lyrics, joyfulness, and expression of love for life. Part of its lyrics read, "You are my little apple, just like the most beautiful cloud on the edge of the sky. Though life is short, I love you forever." Just as the song expresses, Chung was born and raised in a family of love, which has left footprints on the mainland, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. But how does Chung, floating in Beijing, see his family background and maintain his cultural heritage? We'll get to it after another break.
Would you leave it all behind to set your sights on new horizons?
跟其他人不一樣的生活的方法。
將冇可能變成有可能嘅地方。
Could you journey afar to embrace your field of dreams?
江門創業嘅呢3年半嘅時間，
You know, I've been in Shanghai for 18 years.
Hear it firsthand from those who took that leap in footprints.
You can succeed anywhere if you're good enough.
堅持自己嘅初心，堅持自己嘅夢想嘅時候，總有一日你係會贏。
Where everyday people beat the odds and leave their mark. Footprints.
Chung visits his relatives in Hong Kong and Taiwan 2 or 3 times a year. The family visits have made him aware of a societal change in his hometown.
以我家来说，其实我们家是在一个比较相对老一点的区。
My family lives in a rather old neighborhood of Hong Kong. We have been living there for more than 3 decades without moving anywhere else. Now, when I return to see my family, what shocks me most is that there are so few children living in the neighborhood.
现在都只剩老人家了。就观察到一点，就是人口老化问题确实严重。
There are only old people left behind. So the aging problem in Hong Kong is very serious. My mom is already old. My dad has passed away. During my childhood, one of my neighbors had 3 children of a similar age to me. Now, there are no children there.
Like many Hong Kong residents, Chung's family has a background spanning across the mainland and Taiwan. Chung says his family is full of stories, which reflect the overall changes of China in the 20th century. His maternal grandparents were natives of Shenyang, the provincial capital of Liaoning province in northeast China. They moved to Taiwan in 1949, and that's where Chung's mother was born. Chung's father's family hailed from a small county of Guangdong province, thousands of kilometers to the south of Shenyang. The father moved to Hong Kong between the mid-1960s and late 1970s.
然后去了香港之后，
After living for some time in Hong Kong, my father went to Taiwan and met my mother. Then he brought her back to Hong Kong. Thus, I was born in Hong Kong.
Chung says his ancestral roots play an important role in forming his family's sense of identity.
我就觉得很有趣的事情，就是我妈没有在东北生活过。
One interesting thing is that my mom has never lived in northeast China, but there seems to be an indelible mark left on the family. It's probably due to my maternal grandpa and grandma, who always told my mom and her siblings that they were natives of northeast China. So even now, when my mom is asked where she's from, she will answer that she's from northeast China.
Meanwhile, Chung's ancestral background still influences his and his mother's lifestyle.
你看我们家过年如果会去到台湾过年的话，
When my family visits relatives in Taiwan to celebrate the Chinese New Year, We will have a dish called pickled Chinese cabbage with plain boiled pork. It's my maternal grandma who passed down how to make pickled Chinese cabbage. My mom and her siblings all know how to make it. So every year they prepare the food for the Chinese New Year celebrations, and a tradition unique to a particular region will be passed down even though people have migrated to other places.
那之后腌酸菜的技巧可能就会传给我了。
I myself may learn how to make the pickled Chinese cabbage. I haven't learned how to do it yet, but my cousin has said that I can learn it from him.
The pickled Chinese cabbage with plain boiled pork is a popular and delicious dish in northeast China, where Chang's maternal grandparents originated from. The grandson, as a documentary film producer, says he wants to do something for his ancestral hometown of Shenyang.
我还是想要有机会再深入挖掘一下沈阳这个地方。
I wanted to explore what Shenyang can offer me in terms of making a documentary about it. This city is very special for me. I'm thinking about what I can express through my videos. It will be very special and meaningful for me to depict the city, which is home to my ancestral roots.
While his grandparents and mother moved from Shenyang to Taiwan and then to Hong Kong, Chung seems to have reversed the journey. In 2002, at the age of 19, Chung left Hong Kong to attend university in Taiwan, the birthplace of his mother. Chung explains why he made the choice at the time.
因为第一，我妈妈在台湾出生嘛，令我对这个地方其实会有一点。
First, my mom was born in Taiwan. Thus, I have a natural affinity with it, though I was then not familiar with it. Second, I like several Taiwan film directors, such as Hou Xiaoxian and Edward Yang. So I wanted to leave my familiar home in Hong Kong to see Taiwan on my own.
Chung spent 5 years at the Shixing University in Taipei until 2007. He recalls that he underwent a short period of adaptation after arriving in the city.
也是很不一样的，要学习很多新东西。因为虽然
Taiwan is different from Hong Kong. I had to learn many new things. Though my mom spoke a little bit of Mandarin with me during my childhood, I couldn't speak it fluently when I went to Taiwan. So communication was a bit difficult to begin with. But I mastered Mandarin quickly. About half a year later, I had no problem in communicating with Mandarin and understanding Mandarin-speaking lectures.
In Hong Kong, the dominant dialect is Cantonese, while Mandarin and the mainland dialect are mainly used in Taiwan. Altogether, Chung stayed in Taiwan for about 6 years. After that, he came to the mainland. Now, with more than a decade of living and working in Beijing, Chung quite enjoys his current state of life and work. He also encourages young people from Hong Kong to try their luck on the mainland.
如果有一些朋友，可能他心还是比较像我一样，是有点蠢蠢欲动的那种心愿。
If you're restless like me and want to make something of yourself in a place far away from your home, I really encourage you to come to the mainland to try. You don't have to travel as far as I did. You can look in southern China, which is closer to Hong Kong. But the point is that you should take the first step to come out and try.
For all these years living far from home, Chung is grateful for the support and understanding of his family.
其实我妈对我来说一直都是比较放任啦。
My mom has adopted a hands-off attitude towards my life and work. She doesn't intervene in my life like cajoling me to get married. What she taught me when I was a child was that I should know what I want to do and I should not regret my decisions. So over all these years, she hasn't given me any directives as to my life and work, except during the few years of hardship I faced in Beijing.
Chung says he plans to take his mother and sister to travel on the mainland.
因为他们来过，对，但是也很多年前了，可能也有10多年前。
It's been many years since they visited this city. I want them to see the changes that have happened in Beijing over the past decade. I may also take them to Shanghai to have a look.
Chung has been dating a girl and plans to establish his own family on the mainland. That's it for this episode of Footprints. This program is produced by Ying Xiuqi, and I'm Lai Ming. Until next time, bye for now.